This is Perspectivas Latinas, a community service of CAN TV. I'm your host, Juan Carlos Hernandez. In recent history, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning community has made some landmark progress with hard-won rights and respect from disparate groups. But challenges remain, especially for the Latino L.G.B.T.Q community. Here to talk about that and related issues, we have Julio Rodriguez from the organization ALMA. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having us.
Well, first of all, let's start off talking about your organization, how long it's been around, and what your main efforts are.
So we are actually going to be about 25 years old.
25?
Yep, 25. I'm actually one of the co-founders. It was founded by 4 Latino men, 3 of them gay and 1 bisexual. And the intent of it was always about creating visibility around Latinos and the LGBTQ community. And so our work has really focused kind of in 2 areas: advocacy work, helping to fight and work on rights for the Latino gay community, as well as trying to provide education and support for families, for individuals who are coming out and are struggling through that process.
Okay, and what does ALMA stand for?
So ALMA is the Association of Latino Men for Action.
Okay.
And we've, as I said, we've been around 25 years, and our name is somewhat unique because ALMA means soul.
Right, in Spanish.
Yeah, and so the idea was really that we're sort of the soul of the community, and we need to bring ourselves out to the community. So.
Great, great. Actually, I would like to get more into your work and what you're doing and the efforts, especially like with undocumented folks.
Sure.
But before we get into all of that, let's talk about what happened. Happened yesterday. Tell us about that. Yeah, the signature of SB 10.
Yeah, so the signing of the Religious Freedoms and a Marriage Act, which really allows now gay and lesbian couples to be able to marry. So it really is a landmark legislation. Illinois became the 16th state. And so what that really provides for is it allows not only gay and lesbian couples to get married, but it allows religious organizations who, for whatever reasons, don't feel comfortable performing those types of marriages. It actually gives them a way to not have to perform something that they don't feel comfortable with. But for us, it's civil unions passed in about 2.5 years ago.
Right.
I was one of the couples, me and my partner, that got married in got civil unionized, as we called it, because we weren't quite sure what to call it, in Grant Park. But even then, we knew that day that it felt second class, that civil unions really didn't give us, we were barred from 100 benefits that are afforded to straight couples. And so even then, I think we knew that the fight had to be taken to really create marriage equality in Illinois. And so that's really what SB 10 really stands for, is about a continuation of a journey to get us full equality.
And this full acceptance, right? Full acceptance of a couple and what they choose for themselves.
Right.
Tell me some of, you said there were 100 benefits that you didn't, that same-sex couples could not partake of in a civil union. What were some of the most crucial
things
questions?
Like around adoption, burial. So
burial.
Actually, one of the couples that was at the event yesterday, they had been together 50 years. One of the partners had served in the military. But when he passes, his partner, he'll be buried in Arlington Cemetery. His partner cannot be buried with him or next to him because the laws prohibit that only married couples are allowed to be placed next to each other under military rules. And so imagine you've been with somebody for 50 years.
Most of your life.
Yeah, most of your life. You served your country. And at the last point in your life, in your last point of your relationship, the government is going to tell you, well, we're going to separate you. We're going to create something that was never created in your life after 50 years. We're going to create the separation. And so to me, that was the most amazing thing, is to realize that even when you served your country, the discrimination that was around marriage prevented you from having a full and equal life here.
Wow. it's well, this passed in Illinois, but this won't happen even. Will couples be able to be buried together?
Yes.
Even
So,
even
yeah.
though it's a national cemetery.
Yeah, because
Okay.
the fact is, because the law says any married couple.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. One of the things that's kind of interesting about the whole marriage debate is that some of things, actually with the Supreme Court ruling that DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, was unconstitutional, that opened up a huge door for us to have the opportunities to be able to challenge other laws that exist. And it also allowed us to take advantage of laws that are very generic and say any married couple in the United States is entitled to do this.
Yes.
And so those are the kinds of things that I think as we move forward, you're going to see a lot more litigation.
Right.
You're going to see more cases both in state houses as well as at the Supreme Court that are really going to challenge some of the laws that exist around people's rights as a married couple.
What that ruling did was give traction to a lot of that.
It did. Yeah, DOMA was a very significant piece of legislation. First, when it was created, because it really, in some ways, institutionalized the idea of discrimination. You know, and I think what the Supreme Court did was to say, we can't have the Constitution that was built on equality have now amendments or language that really goes counter to the principles by which that the Constitution was created.
What are some of the other places where couples in civil union were excluded or were excluded from what benefits or?
What other states are you saying?
No. You said that when couples here in Illinois became civil unionized, they weren't entitled to these other benefits.
Yeah. So let me bring it closer to the Latino community. So for Latino binational couples, so even though you may have been in a civil union, the fact that you're in a relationship with somebody who's a legal resident of the United States, they can't petition for you like a straight couple can, because marriage is a recognized criteria by which you can petition for someone. And so the civil union, while it was a nice thing, it still didn't help binational couples, and many of them having to. So I had a good friend from Mexico who was here, had a great job. His partner had, they had adopted children, and their whole life was here.
Right, definitely.
And now they had to choose whether they were going to stay here or go back to Mexico, because that's what was going to happen.
Because the one from Mexico was undocumented or something?
Yes.
And couldn't...
and they couldn't petition.
Wow.
And so imagine you're breaking up a whole family.
Right.
And all because of the fact that, we've defined marriage between a man and a woman.
Wow. So now this law that will be in effect on June 1st of 2014 changes all of that.
Right.
Tell me how that feels to you personally. You founded this organization. We're one of the founders 25 years ago. This battle's been going on for more than 40 years or for much longer.
So I'm 54.
54. So you don't look over 30.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. So I've been in a committed relationship now. We're going on 16 years. And it's funny, I've known I was gay probably since I was 7. And my family has known I've been gay probably since my late teens. My parents, my siblings all accept me. They accept my partner. And it was funny, even when I was young, I thought to myself that that dream of having a wedding was never going to be actualized in my lifetime. And even when I founded ALMA, I had always thought, I'm going to take us to a certain point, but the rights that I'm fighting for, I'll probably never be taking advantage of them, and marriage being one of those.
Right.
So yesterday when I sat in the audience and I thought to myself, I'm going to have a dream that I didn't think was possible, be my reality in my lifetime.
Right.
I mean, even now, the emotions are so strong in my and and it took, in some ways, it's like I can't believe it. I keep thinking that, I'm going to wake up and somebody's going to say, "Oh no,
Right,
struggle's
right.
still here," and there are still a lot of struggles. But the idea that my dad, my partner's mother, will be around to see our ceremony is one of the greatest gifts in my life.
Was your partner with you yesterday?
No, because of course we're both very busy and he had to work, but he was there at the march on Springfield.
Okay.
We actually had a large Latino contingent. We met with all the Latino legislators that were down there. We were very proud that all of our Latino legislators voted in favor of gay marriage, and that's a real testament to the Latino community and about how far we've come of our acceptance
Right.
of our family members. And so in some ways, part of yesterday's pride for me was about that the Latino caucus as a group voted in favor of my marriage in the future.
And definitely, I'm just curious about one more personal question.
Sure.
Because this is so personal. When will your ceremony be? In the spring, summer?
Well, it won't be next year because, it takes a while to plan a wedding in for anybody.
Right.
But our hope is probably maybe 2015. My nephew and his fiance actually got engaged this year, and they had said that until marriage equality passed, they would not plan their wedding.
Wow.
And so my whole sense of pride around my family's commitment to my rights is maybe a testament of our work, but it's also a testament of the strength of family. And so they're going to get married next year. So we're going to focus all of our attention on them. And then hopefully the year after that, David and I will get married.
That's awesome. Now, one thing that you've touched on is, and I think we were talking about this before the show just a bit, the stereotype we have of Latino families, and also with some truth to it, is that because of religion or other questions, there's tends to be a rejection or not a full acceptance of our gay brothers and sisters in our families, our gay whatever part of the family. But you've found something else in your own experience. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I'll give you some data to work with because I think that's always helpful. So right before the bill was passed, an organization called Equality Illinois that has been working on this issue for quite some time decided that they would do a survey of various population groups in the state of Illinois. And I think to their surprise and to many people's surprise, over 60% of Latinos that they surveyed said that they supported gay marriage. And then when they did a subset of that group and said, how many of you know somebody in your family or in your life that's gay or lesbian? Right. The number went almost up to 70%.
Wow.
So I really feel like it's one, dispelling a myth, but it's also about the work that's been going on family by family. I mean, I have so many friends from different countries of, Latinos who have come out to their families. And as they make their life with their families, as they integrate their gay life with their Latino life, the more acceptance comes. And I'm always struck by the number of parents that come up to me and they say, yo te vi en la televisión and this, and how much more open they are to having the conversation. It doesn't mean that there's still not families who, for whatever reasons, turn their children or their family members away. But I think we're seeing less of that. And I think the more of us that come out, the more of us that are not afraid to tell our stories, I think the more we're going to see those numbers go even higher.
Definitely. And we also spoke about how the question of religion can come to play a factor in some of that. And I think here in Chicago we have and in the world, I guess, too, because of Pope Francis, we have, I guess, kind of a struggle, a tugging of ideas of where, at least the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, is going, or at least leaning toward. What are your thoughts about the pronouncements of Pope Francis and how that might jibe or not with what the Cardinal of the Catholic Church here in Chicago was saying?
So I think what Pope Francis has done is he's created, I think oftentimes when people talk about issues like this, they try to make them black and white. Mm-hmm. And I think what he has done is he has created an opportunity to say it's gray. And in gray, there's many sort of shades. And I think what he's really created is the opportunity to say, let's go back to the basics. Let's think about what is our faith about. It's about humanity. It's about providing for all of, God's children. And I think he wants to start there. Mm-hmm. And I think he wants to build off the fundamental principle that God loves us all. Mm-hmm. And so how do we move closer to dialogue and figure out what are all of these aspects of our lives, and how do we navigate them? And I think he has really taken a real courageous step in being able to do that, especially being pretty new, right. And unfortunately, Cardinal George, I feel, has really moved back into the dogma. I think he's on the wrong side of history. I think in the faith community, I've talked to many religious leaders in the state, Latino, African American, and others, and I think when they go back to their core beliefs, they are now saying, we need to look at this community as a part of our larger community, and how do we embrace them, and how do we move forward? What that looks like, what does it mean, I don't know. But I think if we can come back to a place of humanity and about everybody being God's children, whether you believe in God or not, for my atheist friends, right. But it is about understanding that it's about equality for all. And once we all achieve that, then let's look at the nuances and what does that mean.
Okay, so tell me how obviously that is one area where the struggle for equality will continue. What do you think this new law means for the entire country now?
So 16 states. Right. I think what it means, and the Supreme Court decision I think is also critical, because you have 16 states, and some of the biggest states. I mean, you have California, you have Illinois, which is the 5th largest state. You have places like New Jersey, New York. You're starting to see. I mean, even a place like Hawaii, which I think people oftentimes don't even know is still part of the 50. Right. I think it's creating a movement towards. It's kind of and I know there's sometimes criticism about this, but as a Latino, it is about civil rights, and it's like the civil rights movement. I think oftentimes we forget the civil rights women's movement, the women's movement. It's not like they were hundreds of years ago. Right. And I think that we're in a trajectory. And when I look at the gay rights movement, quite frankly, we've made huge strides in a very short period of time when you look at other movements. But I think it's because we were engaged in those movements too. Right. And so I think that engagement in those movements has helped create alliances. And so solidarity, I think right? Yeah, solidarity. And I think that's it. I mean, the gay rights bills was supported by labor, by faith-based groups, by non-gay specific groups. And so to me, that's a real opportunity for the 50 states to start moving in the right direction, or I should say the remaining states. Now, ALMA's focus has been primarily on the Latino gay community. What are some of the, you touched on them just a bit, some of the very specific issues that Latino gay men face and are facing and probably will face it for the coming time, and how you're working through some of that, or the kind of alliances you're making. Yeah, so immigration is a huge one. When I was talking about binational couples, if you look at the number of Latinos who are in those situations here in the state of Illinois, that's one issue, is looking at, what is, currently the bill that is in the House basically excludes the gay and lesbian community, except that now with marriage, we sort of came in the back door. So we're forging relationships with groups that are working on the immigration issue and really helping to create a bridge around the LGBT community and the issues that we face as binational couples. A huge issue is the detention centers and the transgender community. The number of them that are really exposed to really horrendous situations where, a transgender woman is being put in a men's detention facility and being mistreated and really putting that person at risk.
Right.
There's been lots of sexual assaults. People who are HIV positive, who are being denied their medications. The fact that the detention centers exist outside of the regular legal system, and then you put a group that is notoriously discriminated against, and you put them in a confined space where they don't have the legal protection. So to me, that's another big issue. Another issue to look at is the fact that for when you look at applying for citizenship, you have to go back to your country of origin.
That's for, right. Everyone. Clinton signed that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a huge risk for somebody who may be coming from a country like Iraq or even Russia, where it's clear that the minute you step off that plane, that you're at risk of never coming back to the States, So those are some of the issues that the Latino gay community and lesbian community and trans communities are facing. And then some of the other issues that, I think oftentimes, the gay community is sort of painted with one big brush. And so people think, poverty, homelessness, unemployment, that those issues are not gay issues.
Right. I think the stereotype tends to be gay and affluent.
Right, exactly. Which actually, recent studies show that actually the same thing that's happening in the general population is very much happening in the gay community. And there's an absence, one of the things that I am really an advocate for is that we need to have more gay characters on television and in other venues that really represent the full spectrum of the gay community. They're very, you look at Spanish language television, and unfortunately, what they do is they re-perpetuate a lot of stereotypes that actually create fear. And they'll say, well, no, we're just sort of having fun with it. But
they're caricatures, right?
Right, they're caricatures. And that would be fine if it was balanced with other images, but it isn't. It oftentimes is the only image that people see. Or they're cast as victims, and again, what's the kind of messaging you're sending to young gay, bisexual, trans, youth around what their future is going to be like?
Well, and talking about youth, how have you focused specifically on helping Latino youth come out? What kind of work have you done with families and schools? Tell me about some of that.
So we've done a couple of things over the years. So we've done some actual work within the schools, providing presentations, working with the Chicago Public Schools. We've partnered with other youth agencies, like I'm going to give a couple of shout outs, the Chicago Youth Service Project, and then Corazon, who's in Cicero. We actually did a leadership summit last summer for the first time in Cicero, and it was multi-generational. So we had people in their 50s, we had people in their early teens, and there were families there, but it was all about leadership and helping people sort of see that this issue isn't a mysterious issue and that there are gay people in Cicero. So,
and it's not hidden away.
Yeah, and it's not hidden away. And so part of what we're trying to do around the whole youth issue is to give young people a feeling that there is a continuum, that what they're feeling right now they don't have to feel isolated, that there is a Latino community that's there, that's willing to embrace them and willing to support them. The other thing is there's a PFLAG Español that really works with Latino families to come, to come full circle, to figure out how they manage this situation.
Tell us what PFLAG is for our viewers, please.
So PFLAG is Parents and Friends of Gays and Lesbians, and it's really a support group. It's a national group, and it really helps parents to have a dialogue with other parents, you know, about, you know, my child has just come out to me, you know, what do I do? Do I go run out and get a flag? You know, but I think for a lot of them is just having them have a space where they can talk about their fears, where they can talk about some of the challenges they're going to have, how they're going to, you know, I think oftentimes we forget that when you come out, you're coming out as a family. The first time I had to really tell my dad that, okay, here's how my coming out is going to affect you. I'm going to march in the Puerto Rican parade, of which he was heavily involved in. And then our particular group was going to march in front of the float that he was on.
Wow.
And I said, so Dad, when I come out, we're all coming out. And I think that's
awesome.
part of the sort of struggle for families, is knowing that when your child comes out, you come out with them.
Right. And how did your dad react?
Well, he was like, ay, Dios. But you know, you know, for somebody who, and you know, one of the challenges with being Latino is you have so little language, positive language, to tell your parents. And so being able to sit down with my dad and really talk about love and talk about relationship and try to sort of build some kind of language around it, because the only words that he could use to define it are such horrible words.
Right.
And so, and I'm really fortunate because my dad really, I think at the end of the day, for somebody who has limited education, somebody who's, you know, worked and struggled his whole life, you know, he stood right by me. You know, when the parade was over, he came over to all of us and he was like, yeah, you did it, and stuff. And he's one of the strongest advocates now around gay rights and stuff. And I think it really speaks to keeping the dialogue open with your families and with your friends. You know, it was hard for my mother knowing that I'm my dad's only son. So I'm, you know, Julio Rodriguez Jr. Getting them to recognize that in some ways their idea for what my future was going to be and the children that I might have. Right. You know, I think that's one of the things for the Latino community, is reconciling this whole sense of continuation of the family. But also Latino gay families have the highest number of children per household, according to the census.
Wow. So I think we're pretty much done. But I think it comes back to the whole question of the heart and the heart of the family, as you've said throughout the show. Julio, thanks so much for coming out and sharing your story and the changes that have just taken place.
Well, thank you for having me.
Perspectivas Latinas is a community service of CAN TV. If your nonprofit organization would like to work with CAN TV, call 312-738-1400 and ask for nonprofit services. Tune into Perspectivas Latinas for local issues and concerns every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. on CAN TV 21. I'm Juan Carlos Hernandez. Thank you for joining us.